closing government, we have Texem M.
Yo, tengo Calderón, los bandoleros. Aunque digan que soy un bandolero donde voy, le doy gracias a Dios por hoy estar donde estoy. Y voy a seguir con mi tumbao y con mis ojos colorados, con mi taco activado. Ustedes conmigo han dado. Oye, a mí me importa poco lo que se diga de mi casa. El ladrón y yo somos socios de la avenida. El bandolero como el mito, el politiquero, que se robó todo el dinero y lo...
And in closing opposition, we have BINUS A.
When I walk the street, vitamins, that D, I'm good, I'm healthy. Every summer I come out, make them disappear like clouds. To me, it's another year, to you, it's all you worry about. Yeah, white tip it's all summer, I make him go dumb-dumb. He doubled down and attacked, says that I'm the only one. Yeah, I make him lose his cool, yeah, I make him go.
Our EFL Grand Final panel has Geneva Roy, Isabella Freeland, Matt Caito, Robert Raos, Rushdoon Ahmed, Ruth Selorme, Acolatse, Simon Luo, and Minami Matsushima. And I'll hand it over to Xiao-ke, the chair, for the motion of this EFL Grand Final.
This motion has an info slide. It reads, Trumpism is a populist ideology and style of politics that combines elements of nationalism, anti-establishment sentiments, isolationism, and being anti-woke. Politicians that adopt Trumpism are usually more aggressive and abrasive in their public advocacy. The motion for the EFL Grand Final reads, this House believes that Trumpism is in the long-term interests of the Republican Party. My name's XK, I use they, them pronouns. I'd like to now ask all my panelists to introduce themselves and give their pronouns if they so wish, starting from the left.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Ruth, Selorme, all the best.
Hi everyone, Rushdoon, good luck.
Hi, Simon Luo, good luck.
Hello, I'm Robert, best of luck.
Matt, best of luck, everyone.
Geneva, best of luck, everyone.
Bella, good luck to all teams.
Minami, congrats and best of luck.
Can I now ask all teams to introduce themselves and give speaker orders and their pronouns if they so wish? OG. OO. CG.
First Manolo, he, him, and then Mauricio, he, him.
CEO.
Jennifer speaking first, Rachel speaking second.
Thanks everyone, and congrats again for making EFL Grand Finals. With no further ado, PM whenever you're ready.
Hi. Oh, sorry. So first, thanks to my family, always support me, my amazing friends, our university and debate society, Diego, Jess, Juanito, Juanita, all our members, the ones that are here that give us encourage, and all the ones that are not here that I'm from Colombia. We're just representing all your support, love, and inspiration.
Thanks for the people who believes in us and give us hope, like Diego Benjages, Juan Esteban moms, and Andres' mom. And in my particular case, those who saved my life until this moment, every hug, every word, and every simple it's okay, I'm here. It takes loss, tears, the most emotional challenge, but at the end it takes one of the most amazing moments in my life, believing and trusting in someone that I truly admire and love, Juan Esteban. Thank you, Latam and Hispanic community, for the women. Our voices has value, and we deserve a world who let us speak, be free, and be well. Thank you. So let's start in 3, 2, 1. The path to victory of opening government is that if we prove that in the long term the traditional values and the existence of necessities of nationalism is going to steal in the long term, we're going to win this debate in terms of how the Republican Party can appeal for those interests and how they're going to work better in terms of those. First, in terms of characterization and how are the Republican Party main interests. Notice something. They want to have capacity to still having political capital in Congress. They want to have unity because they experienced some type of fragmentation. And third, more important, they have to maintain the purism of the party because they have traditional background to defend because they consolidated by the elites of the United States and they have the traditional values to apply for. What is this ideology style of politics wrong, and how this type of style campaigning can maintain their ideals? In first term, we are talking about like maintaining this style as 10, 20 years for probably that is going to happen. But in the second term, how it looks like. Notice something. When I advocate for nationalism, I'm thinking about that these speeches of US first, like the enterprises of USAs are the ones that I'm going to preeminently prioritize. That I'm not going to intervene in long term in the like other countries' fights or other countries' interests. It's going to be more at the interest of the United citizens. Second, anti-establishment sentiments speaks like free speech, like giving the opportunity in the universities to say whatever you want and not attend with the family traditional values or, for example, religion beliefs. This means that you have the possibilities to say whatever you want and did a speech like Trump do that is very free in their own expressions, right? Third, in this isolationism, nothing something. It's not introduce USA in more fights, it's actually the opposite. To retreat, for example, the Ukraine support, but letting them having like an opportunity to concrete some kind of negotiation and become less actively in impose money to put our assets to the fights that they're experiencing. And anti-woke sentiment about progressives, like speak for that families that are wanting to revoke or want to abolish in terms of their speeches. What is going on and why is probable that the people is going to appeal better in our side of the house of this type of speech, and what is the counterfactual? The counterfactual more probable is that they have like some kind of candidates or some kind of ideologies that are more like some type of moderate, you know? Like, for example, not that kind of nationalism. I'm probably going to put the interests of some other countries in European Union or in other parts first, or in some points I'm going to concede their advocacy first than my own itself. Second, in terms of, for example, free, like I'm going to still having like this speech of free market or whatever, but if I need to prioritize other companies or things like that, I'm probably going to do if, for example, the people just are, or the pressure international, it's so hard. And in the other way, I'm not going to do that anti-woke message that, for example, to show people that there are a threat, that they are treating our values, that are treating our means to live and our probable possibilities. What happened with that counterfactual and with that narrative, that is not sustainable for the ways that people now are thinking about politics and what the people want in politics statements. Nothing something. The COVID pandemic and the inflation rates and the unpopular spreading of wars and conflicts are making the people be more afraid to do this type of like soft measures that are putting the countries in threat of their politics legitimacy. What happened in my side of the house is like the Republican Party is kind of still advocating for those sentiments and being more emotional connected with these struggles. Not in something, lose a job or have struggles in my immediate set is something that can allow me to think that they are doing better in my side because they are prioritizing me. In those terms, it's more easily to capture, for example, that type of people. But in the second term, I'm advocating for someone that is charismatic or have like at least a unique personality, like is Trump. Even if they have these very love speeches and whatever, he's able to maintain the people in the interest of the United States, and he's able to, for example, do something like have this election and win in states that he was probably not going to win. But most of it, notice that now the people that is having these speeches in their internal values are the young people who is now in the universities, are the young people who is going to vote in the long term. It's these people who is thinking that it's better and it's more important, for example, the economics, the other things than only the social movements or things like that. It is better someone who can literally put the house in order and try to do something about it because it's more applicable to my indirect interest. Notice that in those cases, I am appealing for more type of people, but I'm protecting something, and it's the control of the narrative. Look something. In the war, there are a lot of figures that have a lot of power. Xi Jinping, Modi, a lot of personalities that have all these factors and all of the narrative to control the power of I'm doing something for the country. If as a Republican Party doesn't work, that means that you lose control of the power of having this type of borders, but at the same time to protect your ideology. Closing, please.
What you need to defend is Trumpism, not traditional Republican value. How do you plan to promote that?
Yeah, and I'm doing that. Actually, I'm explaining to you how the radical interest of nationalism and how the radical strong feeling of doing like a speech in saying that there are sailors that are uncompensate, that they have these issues is happening right. For that, you need not the conservative traditional way to do the things. You need the way that you can assure and says, like Trump says, that you are going to solve the fights, that you are going to maintain the companies at first, like the United States companies. In this kind of pursuit of these speeches, you can have three very huge impacts. The first one is that you are having more opportunity to actually establish the agenda of the Republican Party in the first place. Second, in terms of, for example, the possibility of contra-narratives that they are imposing, like like Democrats or something, you can tell or can be more aggressive in terms of your campaign, and that can allow you to charismatic or emotional be connected with those ideas, that there are the billions, that there are the bad ones, that there are the ones that are not doing something. Because we believe that the world wants more isolation, wants more nationalism. We are very proud to propose.
You're ready.
Is it good this way? Great. I'd like to take a moment to express that I'm profoundly honored to be speaking in the first Brazilian break in history. Barack Obama was the greatest president that the Democrats ever had. He was powerful, he had a strong narrative towards the minorities, and he had every instance of power that he had. As opening opposition, our stance is very clear. We tell you, Trumpism is effective on the short term as an alternative to strong Democrats who have weaponized this kind of narrative. But it's particularly not effective in the long term when the Republicans, they hope, achieve power and consolidate in this type of way. Firstly, why Trump rose? Trump rose as a rich man, a white man, full of charisma, who had all the power of the rhetoric of going against the establishment. Notice, his narrative is strongly anti-establishment, not just against the progressiveness of the Democratic Party, but against all of the structures that once put Barack Obama as the president. He rose offering the new advancements and bringing back the values to power and to the headlights of the United States. However, this anti-establishment can't be forever. Once Trump was president, all of his narrative was conditioned to what he was doing as being president, and he was not re-elected, but instead replaced by Joe Biden, a Democrat who had offered the exact opposite thing. What we say is that this narrative of going against the establishment is not effective once you were the establishment, and that Donald Trump, as the President of the United States, cannot hold this narrative forever, and nor can his potential followers or the next one in the line of his legacy protect this kind of narrative forever. Firstly, we say that this narrative is really polarizing, and it divides the party on itself. Notice, this is an actor motion. We're talking about the Republican Party, not just the United States. An important point is, who are the Republicans? We're talking mainly businessmen in a high council who've got the power and the history and the control of the United States, who have attended the best colleges in America, and who have hold and power of the most important structures of power. They're conservatives in the streets, people who just like those values and that want to preserve, just like opening government tells us. But most importantly, they are the people in the middle who are just in the swing states deciding what's going on into the presidency. Notice, when you have an anti-establishment narrative, this enforces infighting inside of the party. Why is that? Because the big narrative of being an outsider, of having charisma, of having the power of a white man, all of that comes in a personalized structure. It is all centered on the figure of Donald Trump. It is not the Republicans who are making all of those advances. It's not the Republicans who are passing the policies. It's Donald Trump protecting the values of America. And that's what the opening government doesn't engage with. It is intensely conditioned into Donald Trump. In their side of the house, they have to defend that either Donald Trump's going to find a way of living forever and changing the democratic structure so that he can get reelected and reelected, or that he will find followers who can continue his legacy of being anti-establishment, and more importantly, convincing the whole Republican Party of making the sacrifices and infighting that they have made on the Obama scenario forever. Because notice, why did the Republicans choose Trump? Because the fact that he is populist, the fact that he defends the values very intensively and that he has charisma is very effective on the short term. And we give this to the government. We say that it's true that he has this very big appeal. However, it is vicious. Notice that the Republican Party loses all of the power that they have. They lose the control of the narrative or any sort of control over the presidency once the president is someone who's got the power on his figure particularly. Notice, if Donald Trump wants to pass policy A and the Republican Party wants to pass policy B, which is directly opposed to policy A, it's far more likely that Donald Trump, who has the power, the image, and the support of the people who elected him on the basis of himself, will defend this policy. And that's not necessarily in alignment with the Republicans. And we say that on the long term, this is more and more likely to become more prominent because you're sustaining the image of having a strong president, a strong voice who's connecting people and uniting them, and that is vicious against the interests of the businessmen of the High Council or just the average Republican in the streets who cannot connect to the party and the ideology and the values that they hold, historically, but rather to one person and their strong narrative. But secondly, notice that anti-establishment is not effective if you were the establishment. And if Donald Trump wants to hold this narrative forever of going against the policies and fighting back, the struggles in sustaining this just increase because you have more and more people contesting the fact that he has done nothing. Why does he criticize so much the structures and he's been in power twice and he's still doing that? And notice that on the long term, when we take this ad eternum, this only becomes more and more significant to the debate. Because comparatively, in their side of the House, they'll have Republicans fighting back the Republicans themselves and the Democrats, while in our side of the House, it's far more likely that they're just holding on to the values or holding on some sort of different narrative. Yeah.
If all of that is true, why did Trump lose against Biden?
Well, because it's very effective in the short term. He wants to win. He has all of the incentives to win. As I put it to you, it works now because you have a strong Democratic Party. You have Barack Obama in very recent history, and they have all of the incentives to this. But more significantly, notice how immigration and nationalism are two important topics on the long term that are likely to change, and that the Republican Party must do something about it. We disagree with open government. We say America is nationalistic by itself. People are very unlikely, and particularly the Republican Party, into changing the values that they hold on to and what they believe, or the ideology as a whole. But rather, we say that they weaponize this against vulnerable groups, and that this is not sustainable in the long term. Panel, for how long can the Republicans afford Trump explicitly attacking the people of Puerto Rico? How long can they just afford, with the rise of Latin America, with the rise of Mercosur in their connection to the European Union, and just increasing the connections that the rest of America, the children of the United States are making, the emerging countries becoming more and more relevant, can really the Republicans just hold on and attack them forever? We say they cannot. So the control of the narrative of opening government is contingent on them proving that the party, the Republican Party, has the exact same control of the narrative over the president himself, Trump or his followers. We say that this is very much against their interests because the charisma, the power, and the structures just hold on to the president far more than the party. Thank you.
We thank the speaker for their fine speech. DPM whenever you're ready.
Hi. Before I start my speech, I just want to do a couple of words. First of all, I want to thank God for giving me this opportunity and give me also all the chances that I got. Second of all, I want to thank Daniela because she's the most beautiful and intelligent partner that I have, and it has been a great experience. Lastly, to my community, with my Latin American community and the Rosario team, I love you all, you are the best. And my parents because they pay for all of this, and I love them. So, I will start, oh, wait a minute. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1, now. The first thing that I want to do is to be clear on the impact from opening government. Our impact is that in the long run, we are going to be able to be in the hearts and souls of the Republican voters. That is to say that we have more campaigners in the long run. More people doing like Republican content in the social media, talking about this stuff and try to spring more the message. But second of all, more population, it's good because more population creates a perception of success. That is to say that other donors, like for example, this is something that happened to Biden, that when all the people saw that he was going to lose, all the donation for the Democratic Party go away. It's more likely if we demonstrate us as successful, we are going to still have this power and economic power in the long run. This is like a precedence for all the impacts that we are going to have. What is the roadmap to victory from opening government? What we are saying is that Trumpism is not perfect way to do politics. Of course, you got some type of backlash in a period of time, but it's better than the other mechanisms. Look, I want to be clear in the comparative. Every democratic country, and especially the United States, functions over a pendular dynamic. That is to say, maybe Trump is going to be successful right now, but then they are going to be the Democratic Party. But this is not going to be over because we are talking about long term. In the moment that the Democratic Party is going to be on power, we are going to still using this Trumpism, and we are going to say that it's still effective. Why? Because we have the influence in the Congress. We still have influence in the agenda setting in the status quo. That makes us more efficiently. Look, I want to be clear in the comparative because they are saying that we are defending only conservative and traditional values. That is not the case. What is the differentiation? First of all, it's about the mandate. It's about being a strong mandate, having a strong hand. That is to say that in the moment that other countries are going to ask for more money, we are going to say, fuck no, you are not getting that money. But second of all, having more like ambitious proposition, like the Panama Canal. We are going to recover the Panama Canal in the long run. Second of all, it's about demonizing the other parties. It's saying like the dictatorship of the social movements, that they are affecting our children, that they are destroying religion, they are destroying the schools. This is the difference in the comparative about the discourse. This is only a thing that you can get in nationalism and also being anti-woke and being anti-establishments. First of all, why there are incentives to people to believe this in the long run? Why people are going to appeal to this type of ideology? First of all, because in the long run there are going to be a lot of external shocks, as Daniela said. Look, we are talking about Sudan in the last round. This is something that people are going to talk about, that if United States should intervene. We need that this type of crisis is going to still exist. So people are going to say, why are you giving money to doing a military campaign in those places? I think that people, in the moment that you say, we are not giving money, you are going to appeal for the hearts of the people. But second of all, social movements are more likely to radicalize in the future, because they are feeling right now that they have a great threat. Notice that they have seen that the Roe v. Wade has been taken away, so they have an incentive to be more radicalized, to boycott more things, to use more the cancellation. This is an incentive for the Republican citizens and for the conservative people to be more radicalized and to be more over Trumpism. What are the things that we are going to do some rebuttal in this debate? First of all, the first thing that they say to us is that an anti-establishment can't be forever. A couple responses for this. First of all, I think can still happen even if you are in government. Why this is the case? Because you are still having problems in government. Like they are not passing your policies in the long run, or maybe you are not as efficient as you promised in the first place. In my side of the house, you are still using those types of scenarios and blame it in the Democratic Party or in the social movements that are blocking this type of changes, even if you are in the government. So you are protecting yourself as a shield with this type of anti-establishment, even if you are in government. But second of all, it's because we are not guaranteeing that we are going to still be in government in 10 years, but this is something that is like successful when you are opposition, when you are in the other side, or when you are in the other side of the house, and this magnifies the discourse about this kind of stuff. But lastly, why anti-establishment is something that it's forever? It's because it's easy to sell. It does not mean like you have to explain people why this is important. It's something that people can appeal fastly, but second of all, appeals to the more emotional people, like people that have a great heart in conservative ways, like religious people, like people that I think they have a threat expense to others. But lastly, it's because it's a good excuse. Anti-establishment ideology is self-fulfilling, because in the moment that you are not being great in the kind of policies that you are doing, you can blame to others. You can trespass the blame to others. So I think it's effective in the long run. Before I go on, I will take the POI from closing.
Who do you think is going to replace Trump in 2028?
Okay, that is the second thing. Notice something. Why we are going to still having like a perfect person to fulfill this type of job? Notice, this is ideology has been popular right now. That is to say, there is a lot of people that think that this is something admirable or something that they can appeal to. That is to say that right now people are trying to copy this type of style, and they are more likely that in the long run they are going to fulfill this type of shoes. But second of all, it's because there's a lot of charismatic people that can fulfill this type of job. Notice that we have like Marco Rubio or other type of people, or Elon Musk. These people are still existing in both sides of the house because they have an ideology incentive to act in the same way. But lastly, it's because the party itself is going to teach you to be this way, to try to talk about this way in this type of motion. Now, in the infantilized ideology, look, well, Trump is not living forever is something that I already said. But first of all, why this is not something to infantilize, or infantilize is better? First of all, because it connects you with your legacy. That is to say that it connects you to the time where Trump was a great leader, in the golden times of the United States. So people are more likely to have nostalgia, and this is not infantilized, it's people that are remembering the good days. But second of all, it's because you have a lot of identity to this kind of stuff, to pertinence. That is to say that the people that were more emotional right now, in the long run, they are going to remember that and they want to feel that again. So it's more likely to form your identity in this type of basic factors. Lastly, what we are saying is that you do not care, people do not care about politics enough. People do not have all the time to educate themselves about problems, so they are more likely to appeal to this kind of ideology, to emotional baggages, for all of that, proud to propose.
We thank the speaker for their fine speech. Diallo, whenever you're ready.
Testing, testing. Can you hear me correctly from this distance? Okay. I'm also going to do a brief little speech because, as Melanie already said, this is a huge accomplishment for Brazil. But I especially want to thank all of my friends in the Brazilian Debating Institute, because if it wasn't by that institution, I literally wouldn't be here because my flight got canceled. So I literally depend on all you guys and also all the friends I made here at WUDC. I love you all. I'm going to be starting in a couple of seconds. 3, 2, 1. The dumbest thing you can do as a political party that wants to sustain power in the long term is base your electoral voters on charisma and identity instead of affiliation to the party's ideals. We think this is the main problem with OG and why this loses this debate. Let's go on a brief other comparisons. Notice what they say, that you'll get more voters on their side because they have more charisma. As I already said and conceded, that may work in the short term, but this is not what this motion looks about. In the long term, what it looks like, as I already told you, is that it depends specifically on those people's charisma. But I have more additional material on that. Why is it likely to not work? First of all, notice that the most likely challenge that they go is like how you're going to be abrasive and fight against the increasing radicalizing social movements. What they fail to notice is that they are the ones who force the social movements to radicalize and become increasingly more on their side of the house. They happen to cause simple mechanism, overtone window. Whenever you have someone who is like even more abrasive and knows that that is the policy for the long term, that each politician tries to become even more abrasive than the past one, it's most likely that was abrasive today, or what was considered like normal now was considered even more abrasive. Look at the debates that we had in the 2010s, for instance, when we had Obama against the other candidates. It's all polite speech and everyone respecting each other. Compare that to Biden and Trump on how it's extremely more abrasive, because not only you are forced to be abrasive, but now the other side is also forced to be abrasive to fight back on you, not seen as a defenseless politician that can just taking criticism and not defending yourself against it. What this means is that it has an expiration date. That's only so much abrasiveness you can increase in the other side, unless you're gonna like do the capital again or something like that. Which means that at some point they just lost the record, or they lost the advantage that they can get on the voters, and that is a huge problem, because if they are basing all of their identity and voter challenge on being the more abrasive one, now that I can't do that, I lost all of those 10 to 10 years that I could have building identity from prospecting voters that I know in the Republican Party and knowing or the electors on other instances or like on other policies besides charisma. But second of all, notice that reactionary, as my partner already explained, and this is not engaged, is contingent on you having something to react to. It's contingent on you have like a strong government that in the past actually did a lot of things that changed the country for you to attack and say, you know, the country is now shit because this is what they did a lot of these things and changes. This responds perfectly actually CG's POI, and is a perfectly example why the policy fails. The reason Biden even managed to win from Trump in that scenario is that if you don't have something to criticize in your own government because you were the government, you can do anti-establishment against yourself. If your whole politics is based on criticism and based on destructiveness, it's more likely that if you are the term or that any other Republican is the term, you can't actually gain that edge anymore. Or if you have a weak Democratic Party or in that regard, that also tends to happen. But third of all, as I already said, what is the implication here as well, is that you can't be anti-established against the people from the Republican Party, which means that their side looks way more like alternation combination of parties, which means like we are more forced now and more convinced like have a Republican, either have a Republican rise and then lose and have a Democrat, or to have Republicans fighting against each other and have inconsistency in policies anyway. Why do you think that is extremely bad for the interests of this party? Two main reasons. First of all, on the economics, as Malin already told you, they are rich guys that actually or they depend on their richness and on their funds, on the trustability and liability of the government being something that actually follows secure policy for the tumor. That's because any investor, any businessman relies on long-term consistency in laws and how things are applied to actually have a return on their investments. They don't come overnight. And if the law is constantly changing and the investors start to just untrust the government, that comes really bad. Notice that how that is extremely more likely in this scenario that we actually live in now, because we are seeing massive sponges of investments outside. Guys, the US is not the hegemony in that sense that it was anymore. China is increasingly growing and doing all the policies that they can to attract investments. Africa is also like growing in terms of population rating, going to become one of the biggest markets in the world. India is also fighting their fight as well. There are a lot of more susceptible places now for investors to go to, which means that these politicians lose in economic interest on their side. But secondly, also on politics. Why is it extremely bad that you have inconsistency in what you're applying to reversibility? Three main impacts. First of all, reversibility. If you have a Democratic Party winning more on the side or the House of like changing, not only it's more likely that policies that you are able to enact are actually now likely to reverse. Because if you have like 8 years of term to build the strong foundations and legal mechanisms and build the support specifically like in the seats to defend the policy that you got, it's much harder now for them like to manage to invert that majority on the seats or to invert any of those majorities in other agencies if you manage to build that for more. But on their side, you are constantly flip-flopping with the democracy. You can't build specifically that thing. That means that not only you get less policy that is in your interest, like Malin already told you, so like more policy that protects your business in the economic sense, but also in your ideology. Because I know politicians are mostly seen like corrupt, pragmatic pricks, but they also have ideologies for how they see the country, and they would hate that to be changed by the Democratic Party. But second of all, notice that you have also that extremely bad because most of the politics require long-term planning and following consistency on that, which specifically means that if you're not able to follow that of like 4 to 8 years and to actually manage to build a consistent voting base on that regard, you actually are more likely to not be able to concretize a plan. So you're more likely to not be able to maintain like changes in education or to fight back against green plans from the Democrat Party and actually go for alternative methods of energy planning that you're more likely on your side of the house. Before I move on, closing.
Which are the most important necessities that the American voters think they have?
I think as I already said, like most of the economic position and also the international side. But I think as I already told you, our analysis is independent of what is actually like swing votes for the electors. It's mostly on the interest of those politicians and how they are losing merely because they are more likely on their side to have inversion in more alternability specifically. But also notice that thirdly, and this goes in directly engagement against the more voters argument on their side, they seem to treat this debate as only presidential. Remember that are all other elections that happen, like for states, municipal, etc. And the problem here is that when you have something that is built on charisma, you don't have the tailcoat effect. The tailcoat effect is basically when someone, because a president won from that party, tends to vote in other members like for other positions also from that party. That doesn't happen on their side because it's built on charisma. I can't guarantee that Trump will actually, like the guy that is from the Republican Party, will actually follow Trump, or like if I like him. Actually, it's more likely that the opposite happens, as my member already framed you, because that is based on a braveness not only to all of the other political party members, but also to your own political party, like Trump did fiercely on their side of the house. Would that means that you also tend to get less wins when you get a presidential election victory in now of the other states at the state level, which means that you're also less likely to pass policy on those sides and maintain your interests on their side specifically. But thirdly, notice that even if they manage to prove that you win more on their side, we prove how all of those benefits are dependent on contingency on the long term. We think that it's impossible for you to stand as a party without that. Proud to oppose.
We thank the speaker for their refined speech. To open up bottom half of this debate, MG.
Someone left their phone here. Or is it supposed to be here? Is this your phone? Okay, a few quick thank yous. As you may realize, I'm not exactly formally dressed. This is because I didn't actually believe we would be here. in that sense, and because of being the person that pushes me the hardest to actually believe in myself and pushing myself to be better, I want to thank Mauricio, who carried my ass up to this point. Secondly, I want to thank the people who coach me, Benjamin Vigueras, Mati Duran, and Mariana Sandoval. Those people, regardless of the time and when they've done it, have always, especially Benjamin, has always been, will always be, and is my coach. I carry you with me in this final. Third, I want to thank Andrea Marlo. I love you. Everything I do thanks to your support. And lastly, I want to thank the people I coach in the high school circuit because they push me to be better as well. That being said, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to do something that openings didn't, that is biting the bullet, because I believe that this is a motion of the interest of a political party, and a populist political party for that matter, which means that biting the bullet means saying some stuff that may not be the most likable, but that is a legitimate strategy in order to win power. So what I'm going to do in this extension is first extend the framework and explain to you how these voters work, how these parties work, how these institutions in the United States work, and the relation that these parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, actually have and how they react to each other. Then I'm going to tell you why this is, in fact, better in the long term. So first, how do voters actually work? I believe that we have to admit that there are very easily manipulated. They will believe anything they want to believe that they read online, and they're not going to actually critically think about that because they are waiting to listen to the thing that they want to listen in the first place. Secondly, because of that, they are passionate. They are not going to actually do the research regarding whether or not what you are telling them is going to be good for them or not. That is the reason why Trump, when he was proposing to increase tariffs so that steel workers in the United States could actually remain rich, those steel workers believed him, because either if that is demonstrably false by economical analysis, they want to believe it is, and since they are passionate and they're not going to fact check, they are going to believe that this nationalism works. This already blocks everything that they just already told you in opening, because they told us, hey, this strategy is not going to work. These are the reasons why. They may be right, but they have to convince the American voter of that. They have to convince the American Republican voter of that doesn't want to believe it because he's more comfortable believing otherwise. That's the person that they have to convince. That's the person that the party has to convince, and the best way to convince them is through voting for government. Third characteristic from these voters, they don't only look at the speeches that Donald Trump gives in those rallies, they actually just look around and try to find patterns that make them comfortable. They are not only looking at the speeches in the news, they are also looking around and realizing that probably China is rising and their empire is falling, and that the reason is probably the Democrats, not the Republicans, because the Democrats opened the borders and allowed everyone to get rich in the world. Liberalism was, hey, let's be better neighbors for everyone, and that strategy made China powerful, and that made them probably lose power in an exchange. That means that they are looking around and realizing that the patterns that are making them poorer, that are making immigrants take their jobs, that are allowing everything that they consider to be bad is actually fault for someone else. The party that realizes how to actually manipulate the narrative in order to convince them that that is the way that they can win is a party that will win the elections. If we're talking about the interests of a party, then we must realize that those interests are to actually hold that power and hold control of the narrative, not necessarily of the government itself and not just of the voters, but of the narrative as a whole. Lastly, last characteristic is that voters in the United States hate one another. The Democrats hate the Republicans hate the Democrats, or there is at least a very polarized environment in which they understand each other through otherness. They understand that they are the enemy, they are guilty. Those people that want to vaccinate your children are the ones that are harming your nation, and since I am not one of those because I voted for Trump, and Trump doesn't want to invest in vaccines because he doesn't care about healthcare, then that's the person I'm going to vote for. Secondly, how do these parties work? I believe that they do not depend necessarily on just having the votes. I believe that they depend on having the power. This power looks not only like seats in Congress or the Senate, this looks like network, lobby, the support of Donald Trump, of Mark Zuckerberg, or every single other rich American that is influential and owns social media. It depends on having donors so that can fund their campaigns. It believes on having like the control of the newspapers or the support of the newspapers, so that the titles are going to actually say, yeah, vote Republican. They're going to do good for you. Specifically in certain regions, we know how the schools, like the scholar system works in the United States. We know that they simply need an amount of states. This means that strategy, convincing those powerful, influential people that run the informal institutions that shape the identity and the idea of people through telling them that what they are thinking is right, the church, for example, is the way to actually win an election. Before I move on as to how this, the relation between the parties opening.
There is a limited space for ideas in the public discourse. If you're more focusing on attacking your opponent in aggressiveness, you get less time to actually be defending those ideas that I believe are more likely to convince a real voter base in the long term. Deal with that.
I'm going to let Mauricio deal with that because there is a lot of content on the speech left. So what is the relation with the contrast, with the Democrats? I believe that the Republicans have to take advantage of an opportunity right now. And it's that the Democrats are lacking an identity. The fact that they're switching from an old male candidate to a young female candidate tells us this. They don't know what to do in order to beat Trump. The reason why Biden beat Trump in the last elections is because actually the Republicans stopped supporting Trump. The moment where they realized that he might lose the impeachment or he might have gone to jail, that's the moment in which certain vocal Republicans started talking shit about Trump and they started being colder in this idea, and that's how they lost the elections. But the people that actually stormed the Congress proved to us that there is still a lot of support for these radical ideas because they were told what they wanted to hear, that their democracy was being attacked. So why is this stance better in the long term? And I'm going to deal with the other point from opening opposition, which is that this is not possible without Trump. The only answer that I have is this one. I don't think that it's really hard for the Republican Party to find another rich, white, problematic old man with power in the United States politics. So I believe that anyone that is basically anti-immigration is probably a good fit to this clown. So that being said, why is this better in the long term? First of all, because you take advantage of polarization. Basically, you just let them do the work for you. If I radicalize the Republicans that are already Republicans, and by extension radicalize the Democrats, those Democrats are going to convince those Republicans to vote for me. Like, I don't have to do that much of a heavy lifting because they're going to convince themselves. Secondly, consistency. The fact that they are actually they keep on listening to the ideas that have made America great before and that therefore can make America great again. It's not a coincidence that is the fucking slogan. It's probably going to be likable for the Republicans. It's probably the only mechanism that they need, going to something that they already feel that worked. But thirdly is the identity, is to tell them that the socialization from their institutions that have made them love the fetishism of their military, the fetishism of their institutions, and to actually believe that they are a liberal country when they're actually a realist country, and that they are the most free country in the world when that is not true. It's just manipulation that has been carried through nationalism, through this anti-wokeism, and through these policies that we're defending for the Republicans in the closing government. Proud to propose.
First, before I start, I would like to shout out to the people of Indonesia and all the Asian representations here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Firstly, Firstly, I would like to thank all of our coaches. Shout out to Kaomar for always being here for us, being the best supporter for us, and also preparing us, Kaupi, Kahans, if you're watching, coaching us for the past few months and making sure that we are ready to stand here And of course, to Kabatara for being there since the start of my debating journey. Couldn't have been here without you. Your support, insights, and valuable lessons throughout the journey has been so detrimental to us. To my parents for the prayers and support from all the way across the globe. To my partner, Rachel, as well, for persevering together through this. Couldn't have done it without you. I would also like to thank the Indonesian debating community and also to my university, BINUS, for giving me this platform to speak up. Also, special shout out to Karagina, Nico, Uki, Francisca, and Ramazan, and to my significant other. Hope you see this, and I hope I'll get to make you all proud. I think OO literally lacks with a lack of counterfactual under their side, which is why inherently they can't have any of their benefits. But first, let us address what is the long-term interest of the Republican Party. They would want to win several elections again in the future. They want to have candidates that can follow the Republicans' policy goals. What are those? Things like conservative economy, serving the interests of the donors. What does that mean? This means that Republicans have an internal goal inside the party to have someone that they can quote-unquote control and direct by their party, right? Just not to inherently win. What is this something that is so important, right? Because I think what is the long-term interest is something that is, I will explain that later on my substantive as well. But on the counterfactual, firstly, what are we going to do under our side? Firstly, we are going to make more sustainable and put forth things that are resonating with the people. Things like economy, state priority, focus more on practicality, on, things that people actually want. Because that is the interest of why Trump is actually inherently won in 2024 because of his economic policies, right? And it is shown that now this is what people care about the most. What's this more likely to succeed under our side? Because firstly, people are tired of rhetorics. They want more tangible benefits that actually can benefit the people from the grassroots underground. Secondly, people are now more desensitized to personas as they have been failed again and again. This is also the reason why Trump didn't win in 2020, right? He didn't win because of his Trumpism, and inherently Biden won because of his policies as well. Kamala is also too much of persona and no distinctions of policy. This is why personas don't work anymore as well, right? But thirdly, what people care now the most is on policies. Reasons why Trump won in 2024 is because the Democratic Party's campaign was bad, not because Trumpism is something that is popular. This is what people need the most, and what people want is, the things that they need is money, right? Therefore, this is also what would allow the Republican Party to win under our side. By focusing more on conservative economy, also has already making lots of voters regret as well, right, under their side, because people in status quo realize that tariffs actually make prices higher for locals as well, right? This is inherently why Trumpism won't work, in a micro scale like what CG wants, right? What happens then when government side tries this at the very first place? Because our biggest claim on CO is if Republicans want to win long term, they can't use Trumpism. Nobody can do Trump better than he can. Trumpism is seen to people not as an ideology, but it's a cult of a personality. This is inherently going to be different from OO, right? Because it is a propaganda that focuses on Trump rather than as a person, but more of a persona rather than the ideology itself. Because every other Republican has failed in replicating Trump. They look like cheap replacement of him, and they have never been successful in enacting Trumpism. Look at J.D. Vance, the current vice president. This comes off as a weirdo. Ted Cruz isn't just, as domineering and as alpha or sigma as Trump. That is why inherently that won't work with anyone else. Why this shows you that Trump is uniquely him. This is the missing link on why OO is still very much contingent, very much contingent on like OG's rebuttals. This is where we are going to come in, because he is capable of pulling off that persona. Things like, firstly, manipulating the media the best. He knows the media the best with his past experience of being a celebrity and being a reality show star. Him having those unique experience makes him the most, outward from all the politicians that have. This is something that can't be replicated with other politicians. They just looks like they're forcing themselves to be anti-woke. What are Trump's persona uniquely like him? Things like nationalism. Secondly, his MAGA personality, being able to rally people's opinions. But thirdly, him having, felonies and crimes, but still being able to win, shows you how strong his persona and his charisma is towards the people. So individually, when this is attempted in the future, they won't be able to succeed. Trump has done his 2 terms already as a president, and all other people who will try to replicate him will fail. This means that Trumpism will be popular in the future, and this is not the interest of the Republican Party as well. This is not just because this is not the interest of the Republican Party, like OO says, but we say it won't be successfully done at the very first place. But then this is also, secondly, our substantive on what happens in the future when Republicans does this, right? What happens when Gov tries this in the future? Later, when government tries to put someone to emulate Trump in the future, it will be anti-establishment all over again, which will be very difficult to sustain and will be too radical. Why is this likely? On three things. Firstly, because they will try to overcompensate to look better than Trump. They will rally people more. They will try to be even more anti-woke and be even more far-right. Because secondly, now that they are Trump's replacement, they need to appease the voters that votes Trump because of his rhetorics, which means you are enabling the most radical forms of voices to happen under the side of government. But thirdly, if you are moderate, you are no longer going to be buying into Trumpism. This is what they need to defend under government. But before I continue, on your side.
You don't need exactly Trump, only someone that continues his legacy. You need to be comparative. The counterfactual is someone that is more weak because it has to concede to the pressures of the international pressures and all this kind of stuff.
I think inherently, right, the rhetorics of Trump is not to care about the global anyway, right? Because it's literally in the info side, because like, it's isolationism. He only cares about United States and United States itself, right? Inherently. So I don't think that would work to, make the people less anti-woke under your side. This is what is missing under OO's analysis on the future implications of what happens to the Republican Party. Those analyses are important because in the future, the Democrat Party will put forward better candidates and learn from their mistakes. They learned that Hillary failed in 2020, right? They used Biden in 2020 and he won. Kamala failed in 2024, so they will put forth better candidates in the future. Republicans need to stay adaptive and they cannot rely on Trumpism long term. This is true during the 2020 era, like what I've said before. He didn't win because people are sick of those horrendous policies and rhetorics. So in the future, we will choose politicians that are much more focused on homegrown economics, things like businesses, pro-establishment to support local businesses instead of anti-wokeness, like what I said before. What is the weighing then, right? Because I think you need to weigh us over the other benches because we are actually the one that gives you the benefits. We are actually the ones that gives you the most amount of tangibility of what is likely to happen on why our comparative is going to be better under our side. But then what happens under government side is only going to be a failed attempts to make it, but then the more further implications is more harm is going to be happening to the people underground because they are going to be much more radical under their side. Proud to be CEO. Thank you.
We thank the speaker for a fine speech. Gov Whip, whenever you're ready.
Hi. Wow, it sounds really strong. Okay. First, I want to thank my family. Also, I want to thank my debate club, Debatexem. I've been with you since I was just a kid. Now, I've been growing, so I love you. Mostly, I want to thank Benjamin for being literally my inspiration every day. I want to be like you in the future. Also to Matias Duran because I do admire, and for my girlfriend Aranza because you are the love of my life, and for Latino America, que viva Latino America and que viva Mexico. So I'm gonna start in 3, 2, wait. I love you, Manolo. You are the best debater I've ever known. I love you. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. I want to be very clear. The extensions that Manolo brought you in his speech are the most important. I want to recap them first. Note that what Manolo proves you is that the Trumpism ideology is very it can be replicated easily and it's accepted by the most important actors in the status quo, like for example, businessmen, or for example, the church, or for example, CEOs of newspapers. These actors are mainly conservatives as they don't want to change the status quo because as they are privileged, they don't want the status quo to change because if the status quo change, then they will lose their privilege. So why Trumpism is effective? Because Trumpism doesn't challenge the status quo. Trumpism wanna benefit the status quo. This impact is that Trumpism gets alliances with these powerful and important actors. This is important because these alliances traduces into more money, into more platform, into more alliances in the future in order to win the elections or to control the platform. This extension is at first logically prior in order to get the success that opening government want to get. So this is important because once we already proved, as Manolo told you, that Trumpism gets more alliances and powerful friends in the status quo, we win in the point of success through a prior logically weighing. But two, note that also Manolo proved you how this ideology is consistent through the days and the days. This is important because voters do not want to change because the change scares the majority of people in terms of politics, as they don't want to lose, for example, or as they don't want to have changes in what or how many taxes they are paying. That is to say that having unstable politics and a stable ideology is good because the majority of voters will perceive that the Republican Party is a safe place to vote because it is consistent throughout the time. The third extension, and this extension flips out the case of the entire opposition bench, it's important because note that opposition lose the debate in their first second as they think that Trumpism is just a face and a white man. Trumpism is more than just a man, so this implies that this ideology can be replicated with other persons. Note that Trumpism is a set of proposals, like for example, do not trade with China, do not lose factories in order to them to be in Mexico. Trumpism wants factories to be in Mexico. Trumpism wants to benefit Americans, like literally America for America. This is important because what this ideology satisfies is that this narrative it's seen as, for example, like having factories in the USA and do not let them go to other countries, for example, Mexico, or do not have changes into the abortion laws because people do not want to change the way they think about life or structural values. This is important because Trumpism is the only ideology that protects the way people, the majority of people, thinks, and this is important in order to get success. And lastly, the extension that Manolo brought you about how to deal with the actor of the Democratic Party, because in order to understand the relevance of that extension is that the Democratic Party is changing right now because there's no certain leader in the Democratic Party. That is to say that the proposals might change and that changes can be threatening to the Republican Party. So when we have the Trumpism, we radicalize our voters and we do not let them rely on the changes of the Democratic Party proposals. This is important because this is a line that do not rely on the changes that the Democratic Party will do in the future. So this guarantees success in the elections, but first I'm taking opening.
We fulfill a higher burden by dealing with the Gov's best case, even if the Trump mechanism works to create more polarization and flipping of parties, which harms the Republican Party members' income and their policy.
The complete point of opening opposition is that no one will be able to replicate Trumpism and that people will be fighting to be the most important person in the Republican Party. That's completely false because note, when we have Trumpism is the only ideology, it's the central point of the Republican Party. This is important because when Trumpism is the most important ideology, there is no place for other ideologies, like for example, Ron DeSantis ideologies or other persons, because Ron DeSantis should prioritize the Trumpism. this is important because we reduce the inside backlash of the Republican Party. So we have a stronger party in terms of how they work internally. So why we beat opening government? It's simple. Opening government rely heavily on a line that wasn't even explained about how they can control the geopolitics scenario, which hasn't been explained and hasn't been even weighted. But to know that once we explain how we really deal with the most important actors in the US scenario, then we get really a likely success. They are completely relying on a charismatic mechanism that isn't really what really implies being like the Trumpism. Trumpism is furthermore than just a face and just a way you shake hands. Trumpism is a way of proposals. So we do explain more, and we explain in sense of frameworks why we need Trumpism in terms of the changes that the Democratic Party might do. Why we win opposition bench? Because we do explain how really works the Trumpism. They completely rely on a non-mechanized point about that anyone will be able to replicate Trumpism. That's completely false. I think that Manolo answered to that in a very effective way in his speech. But also, we explain how we can replicate Trumpism, but most important, how this Trumpism ideology is effective in order to deal with the most important actors. Opposition only say, we have other alternatives, like for example, attending to the poor people. I have a very important thing to say to you. That alternative is not exclusive. So closing opposition cannot win using that alternative, because we can also have that alternative. So the only answer in this speech is closing government proud to propose.
We thank the speaker for his fine speech and welcome Op Whip to finish this debate. Hear, hear.
Okay, before I start my speech as well, just very quickly, I want to thank all of our amazing coaches who made everything possible for Indonesia. To Kak Omar, who's always here to check up on us and making sure that we're mentally well. To Kak Upi and Kak Hans, who's all the way in Indonesia but is still willing to stay up late and is always one text away to assist us and to make sure that we're also mentally well. But most importantly, to Kak Batara, who's already been here since day one. Thank you for always believing in us, even during our lowest point. But lastly, also thank you to Indonesia, to BINUS, to Kak Jen, to everyone who has supported us to get into the stage, both Kak Siska, Kak Rama, Kak Regina, Nico, and also Justin, for taking the time to watch our round. This is as much yours as it is mine. I think it's a very good momentum for Indonesia to stand here and be proud that we're on the stage. I think most GovBench doesn't engage the spirit of this debate, right? Because it's not about research or people's understanding on politics, but how they react to Trumpism as the only tagline or the only ideology the Republican will always go in the long run. The fact that people already hate and regret the terror policy means that they do not like Trumpism as a whole or the entirety of the policy itself. They're aware, and exactly because they are aware, Republicans need to resonate its policy to people in order for them to win. That is the biggest point that comes only uniquely from CO in terms of what actually gives you the win inside the long run, and not just about whether or not it's a cult of personality debate that what opening exchange is also about. Let's first talk about both government bench, right? Because they assume that the Trumpism ideology is going to win because Trump has already won 2 elections. But I would just like to flag that this argument would only work if Trumpism is the only reason why Republican can win. If CO can prove to you why Republican didn't win because of Trumpism and because of the ideology, means that it won't be strategic for you to run it, especially in the long run when it's no longer Trump who does it. Firstly, Trump didn't win because Trumpism is grand. They win because Democrats fucked up. This means that Hillary Clinton, they tried way too hard to play the minority card, to play the women card, even if it doesn't resonate to majority of society, and especially the swing voters, that is going to be the biggest actor in terms of giving you the win for the US politics. But Kamala also lost because she doesn't have a strong stance and tries too hard to appease everyone, but doesn't appease the people who would actually give you the win in terms of the election itself, right? So most likely, because you know that Democrats will send a better candidate in the future, you need to make sure that your own policy is something that actually relates to the people and is what people need in order for you to win. What you need is not Trump's shadow, but a clear stance for what you can actually offer. So let's first talk about OG and their lack of understanding for Trumpism, right? Because I think I already pointed out to the POI that they're just arguing for traditional Republican value per se and not Trumpism with their individual stance and with their individual shadow that they try to project to you under their side. What did they fail to prove to you? 3 things. First, how do you plan to promote Trumpism? Second, what specific values are they planning to defend? But thirdly, how is the specificity of Trumpism far better for other candidates who is not Trump? How is it going to be compelling for society for them to actually vote for Republican, right? What does this imply to you, right? Because I think if they fail to prove these 3 things, they're unable to make sure that people and other Republican candidates are able to win. But just to quickly flag, because I think CG is just derivative over OG's entire argument in terms of getting more benefits from Trump per se, because I think they, at the very least, they say that it's easy for you to find another Trump in under their side of the House. We're going to prove to you why, without these 3 answers, both government bench cannot win. Firstly, we already asked through the POI, who's going to replace Trump in the next 2028 election? OG gives you no answer because they think it's not important, and CG tells you that they assume they can find another Trump. What is the biggest problem with this point, right? Because firstly, none other, like regardless of their answer, it really doesn't matter because no one else is Trump, but Trumpism is something that is only unique to Donald Trump. Trumpism is a shadow the Republican would only run as puppets, not a unique policy that gives them the middle ground, that gives them the entire standing point and the entire reason for people to vote for them, especially for the middle ground conservatives. Why is this important, right? This is most important because swing votes are the ones who would determine who is going to win for the next election, and that is what the Republican Party would actually want. But secondly then, I think all of OG and CG's promise for investment, for company, for Chinese competition, and etc. is only under Trump's name. But exactly because Trump can no longer run for another election because he's already gone through 2 of these elections means that they will lose all of their benefits. Then under their side of the House, they're unable to prove to you as to why it's going to be unique under their side of the House for you to get all those competitions and economy. But thirdly then, I think even if they can find another better Trump like what CG tries to assert to you, unfortunately, people wouldn't be able to react well. Look at what happened to Ted Cruz and JD Vance, right? They're just being seen as a tokenistic and cheap replacement of Trump because you try too hard to manipulate the media, even if you do not have Trump's persona, even if you're not as charismatic to become the first felony that becomes the US president. That is the biggest problem that you have on their side of the House, right? Because you cannot just say that you have another white man who's anti-immigrant. It has to be specifically Trump or the shadows of Trump in which you cannot find that under CG's role. If not, it's only going to be seen as a tokenistic value that these Republicans have in terms of trying to run for the election. We've already proven to you under CO why Democrats is likely going to push for another better candidate, which is why in the future, if you're unable to get that upper hand, you're not going to win then under their side of the House. But most importantly, even if they can be successful in terms of pushing for Trumpism, most likely it's also not going to be sustainable, right? Because you need to do anti-establishment all over again. Most likely they will only be seen as radical because you do not want to create a lot of these, because you need to create all these controversies in order for you to win. It doesn't appease the middle ground society in which already proven to you what's most important in this round. So the framing of a projection is the most important in this debate because it is what gives you popularity, it is what guarantees you to win for these Republican Party. So what actually matters in this debate is the projection of Republican stance. Exactly because Democrats will change, exactly because the Democrats will do better, you need to react accordingly to what society actually want and what they actually need on the ground in order for them to favor you in terms of their own election. Before that, opening.
Closing opposition does not have a counterfactual. We already explained to you structural reasons why people in the long run are going to be more polarized or more emotional about things. I think this is the reason why in comparative, even if it is no Trump, it's the better option.
Okay. here's the thing, right? We've already proven to you why on Gen. We already told you that people hate the tax policy. They hate the tariff policy, in which we already proven why people do not resonate with it. But secondly then, on the idea of counterfactual, it's quite funny because O is the one who doesn't have a counterfactual. Gen is the one who gives you the counterfactual. What exactly will make Republicans win in the long run is the policy that is going to be good for the people. Because this is the missing link that OO missed, that is the most obvious counterfactual that you need. What makes the Republican win is the hard economic policy or the safety policy in which people actually need in order to survive. Firstly, because this guarantees people's livelihood. You do not want another 200% of tariff because it makes products a lot more expensive for people to get. It makes it very hard for you to pay these taxes in order for you to live your life and to make sure that your family is being provided with food, right? So people want good economical policy. That is the biggest thing that we want to push for you, not under Trumpism, but under the entire Republican value on conservative economic policies. This is exactly why you need pro-establishment. You need good regulation so that it eases them to open up business, to expand local industry, and etc. Because that is what puts food on your table and what makes people think is going to be most important in order for them to live. Why is this most important? I think first of all, based on counterfactual alone, we're able to win over 3 other benches because it is the concrete proof as to what people would actually need, especially the people in the middle ground, especially the people who are in swing states and etc. But secondly then, moderation and appeasing society matters the most because it's not just the people in general, but also the swing voters who cannot, who do not want a lot of these radical policies in order for them to vote for the next president. So if you want to win for Republicans, you should vote for CO.
We thank the speaker for a fine speech and all speakers for an excellent debate. Please cross the floor, Xiao-ke.